Do you know what to expect in the aftermath of your divorce when you have to make changes to your living arrangements? I didn't know either, but I have someone today that's going to share that information with us. Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries with Tanya E. Hood. I have a special guest joining us today. So, for those of you that have not yet heard, we have Mr. L.R. Cohen.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Hey, L.R., how you doing? Thanks so much for being here today.
I'm well. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Doing well. Now let's pause for a second because there's a lot of people here that have not yet met you. Now, for those of you that are just getting a chance to meet L.R. Cohen, he has over 20 years of experience in sales and customer service. His goal is to provide insight and guidance in everything financial. He is the founder of Lone Ranger Consulting Services. L.R., thank you so much for being here and pouring your insight into my audience today. Is there any more that you would like to share about yourself?
Well, just a backstory. I'm just, someone that's just looking to provide, financial guidance to those who aren't as literate in the financial industry. It's, the backbone of the economy, and also, a platform for us to build our future on. And a lot of people don't know how money works or just how debt management works and things like that. So I'm just paying it forward, just being obedient to what God wants me to do, and that's just be a great teacher to those.
And we need great teachers like that. So thank you for sharing that because being in the financial services is a whole lot of things that we do back and forth. But let's let the people know a little bit more about you. How have you reset in life? Give them a little more insight because there's always one something for those of us to find ourselves in service like this that drew us here. What have you done to reset your world to get to this place today?
Well, I've been in sales and customer service for about 20 years. I'd say right around the inflation era hike, right, a few years ago, where rates were skyrocketing. I was a little bit burnt out, and I decided to try to reinvent myself. I went to the servicing side of the mortgage industry. I got a job with the Department of VA, and I was working with loans that were facing foreclosure. It was not as gratifying as it was with helping those, refinance their mortgages with cash out to pay off their debts. So I decided to come back. But that year off it kind of made me start thinking about branching out, because I knew that just helping people with just refinancing wasn't just going to be the end all be all for me. So I decided to create a financial consulting service where I'm just giving insight on budget management, debt management, financial management, and in some cases, retirement planning and things like that. But yeah, it just kind of just came out of the sky, the Lone Ranger, God downloaded that on my brain, and I just started doing my research on how I wanted to help the masses, and the rest is history.
Well, I'm glad that you have a heart to serve because for some of us, when we're going through some of those issues that was really chaotic, like for me, in the aftermath of my divorce, my financial situation went to pot. Because here's the thing that messed me up trying to get a new place to stay. I was stuck in a two-bedroom apartment, couldn't really move because my credit score went from 736 down to 526.
Mm.
Not a whole lot about what I did personally, but because of circumstances that occurred, I found myself in situations that I felt stuck. With your heart to serve, how do you help individuals that find themselves in a position where once they were in a better financial position because they also had credit that can give them some other resources? But
Hmm.
now, on this side of the journey, your score won't let you do much more than walk across the street and say hi to looking at what you would like to see, but you can't get what you truly desire.
Hmm.
Talk a little more about what you can do to help them.
Well, the first thing I would tell people is that, you have to be able to swallow that tough pill, which is acknowledging where you are currently as far as your finances go. And then once you acknowledge and accept where you are, then that's going to, it's going to be helpful for you to do your due diligence as far as, creating a plan, knowing where to go, knowing who to speak with, and also understanding the turnaround time is going to take. Because some things, like building credit, it's not really going to be an overnight process. It's going to take some time. You're, like you said, got a FICO score at 520. There's not much you can do. So, I would say the very first thing is just, ripping the Band-Aid off, accepting where you are, and then creating a plan and going from there.
So here's the thing about a plan. The piece that we know we need to do, but it's not real sexy because when people hear it, it's a budget. How do you help people walk through the thought process about, okay, I know I got to get a plan, but the word budget sounds like a curse word in some regards. What do they need to do to revamp their mindset so that they can move into a better direction? How do you help them get through that?
Well, I always tell people that money management, debt management, or any type of financial management is more cerebral than it is analytical. The numbers are the numbers. If you make $2,000 and you got $1,500 in expenses, it is what it is. You have a $500 surplus. But it's more so cerebral by understanding how money works and putting a name on every dollar that comes in and a name on every dollar that comes out, and staying consistent. It's just like a financial diet, if you will. If you have a plan and you stick to it, eventually it'll manifest if you faint not. But if you veer off or if you backslide or what have you, and you're just spinning your wheels, you can't get mad if you're not making any progress if you're not following the process. So what I do here at the consulting firm is we do a general assessment of your finances. We also get a general assessment, mentally, as far as like how you approach your finances, how you view your finances. And then we create a plan for you guys based off of what you're trying to accomplish. And I assess, based on what you're bringing in and what's going out, I'll give you a more realistic outlook as far as what you can do. Because some people think, oh, I can save $1,000 a month, but you only got $500 in surplus. So you got to be more realistic. So we look at all the nuances and all the intricate details of your budget, and then we put together a program that's tailor-made for you.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Because some of us, when we are walking through this journey, we don't have that surplus that you were just talking about. So getting to that place, we need to get a little more adjustments. Something that I have once, because in my past life, used to help individuals get themselves together with real estate investing. And I use that as a tool to help them navigate their journey because a lot of people, they want a house. So then when we get the chance to talk to people like you, we got to get some steps together ahead of time. Give someone that does not quite see how to get that surplus, because I didn't have a surplus. In the aftermath of my divorce, I was struggling. What they often may have heard the term robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yeah, I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I took the money from Jim. So it wasn't working for me. So how do we get people to the new vision of, I got to eventually get to a surplus, but this is what I'm working with? What do you do to help them begin?
So once you make a determination as far as where you are financially, from there you kind of start assessing where you can make some cutbacks. You have fixed expenses and you have variable expenses. Like, so for example, your fixed expense, like a mortgage or a rent, your car note, things like that that you know are going to come out each month at a certain amount each month. You can kind of game plan for that. But the variable expenses are the things that we first start on, try to make some cutbacks on. So if you have subscriptions somewhere that you're not really using, you can cut back on that. One of the easiest ways to help manage your money is a cash system. So instead of, using your debit card to swipe on everything, like for gas or food and personal expenses, adopt a cash system, where you set aside a certain amount of money for gas each week, a certain amount of money for food each week, and kind of helps limit the overspending and things of that sort. And then, obviously it's a tough pill to swallow, but if you're not bringing in enough money, you have to seek other forms of employment, maybe get a second job like Uber or what have you. But the bottom line is, if you don't have enough money coming in, and you have more going out for your expenses, you got to find a way to generate more income. So the two biggest ways are either to cut back on things that are variable or seek additional employment.
I so agree with that. And these are the things that we know needs to be done. We don't often like to hear it. So cutting back on some of the things, if you find yourself in a position where I have no subscriptions and I have none of those things that I really need to cut back on, one of the things to help me through my journey, because I didn't have any of those things, but I still had a $300 deficit that was kicking my butt. The credit card that I was using to sort of float me through the process, because my ex decided that he wasn't going to honor the agreement that he had on his end. Our finances being tied together for so long, Even though I had the divorce decree, even though I had that time period that went past, when he messed up, my credit got impacted because
Hmm.
they closed his account and decided, oh, she must be connected. And
Next of
those
kin.
cards were
Yeah.
not even connected to his.
Hmm.
So I got an interest rate increase because I was managing my part. But when
Hmm.
they increased the interest rate, it increased the amount that they wanted me to pay monthly.
Hmm.
And that threw everything off. And that snowball just kept kicking and just kept kicking and just kept kicking. When we find ourselves there, is there something else that you can share? Because you did say get another job. But if we are in a position where it's one more thing that's just outside of that element, like that situation, is there something that you can share or a program that's offered that people can walk into to just help them bridge the gap a little bit?
So there's a lot of financial options out there for you to either do like a debt consolidation. If you're a homeowner, you can do a cash out refi to kind of consolidate all of the debts into one payment that rolls everything into the mortgage. Now, I know it's a little bit of a scary thing right now with everybody having low interest rates, and the rates in today's market are a little higher. But I always tell people when it comes to debt management, it's going to be a trade off no matter what you do. If you enter a debt management program that negotiates settlement balances, the trade off is they want you to go delinquent on all of your accounts for at least 3 to 6 months before they do any type of negotiation. That kills your credit, but in the long haul, it helps pay off the debts, at a cheaper rate, if you will. Again, the cash out refi, you roll everything into your mortgage. You might get a higher interest rate on your mortgage, but you may save some money on the back end by reducing your total payments by rolling everything into one interest rate. And then from there, if you haven't like any collections or charge offs or anything like that you're still paying on, those accounts are officially off the book for the creditor, which means that you can settle for those for pennies on the dollar, maybe 60% of the balance. So if you have any collections or charge offs that you're still paying on, you can actually call the creditor and negotiate a settlement balance yourself without having any adverse effect on your score. So, and then lastly, if it's like absolute dire need, there's state and county government programs that you can reach out to for financial aid to help with either rent or avoiding foreclosure and things like that.
That is so good. And I'm glad that you share that because I actually had to use some of those options as a resource to me.
Yep,
I
I did
called the
too.
creditors and let them know, hey, this is my situation. And here's the part that helped me make some of those decisions because I did not have the house anymore. That was a situation that we could not get situated. But walking into a space where I did not want to have the total pieces rolled in, but the
Hmm.
conversation. I had $5,000 worth of debt that just got totally removed because I made the phone call. That gave me a little bit of pep in my step, a little bit of like,
Hmm.
oh, I can do
Hmm.
this. And when you share the information, like if you have the interest rate when you're consolidating all these things, it may be a little bit higher if you're doing that with your home. But here's something that I've often shared with others as well. Take a look at all of your debts, list them out. That's part of preparing for that budget that you were talking about.
Hmm.
But next to each of the dollar amounts, list the interest. Add up all the dollar amounts so you know your total. Add
Hmm.
up all the interest so that you can truly see the amount of interest that you're paying. Because if your current home mortgage is probably, let's say, 5% that you're
Hmm.
paying on what that is, but all of the debts and all of the things that you have, and you add those up, you're probably paying about 57% interest.
Yeah.
So to
It,
get
it,
a new loan that may be, let's say 10 or 11, just making up a number here,
mhm.
that is still a 40% savings.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that I try to get people to understand is the trade-offs that come with that management. Like you said, like if someone has a 32% interest rate on their credit card and they're making minimum payments only, like hey, I can save you hypothetically, let's say you're paying $1,500 a month for your mortgage and an extra $500 minimum payment for credit cards. That's $2,000 a month that you're paying for two separate accounts with two separate interest rates. I can leverage that by putting everything into one rate, one payment, instead of you making $2,000 a month. Now you're making 16 or 1700. And a lot of people say, well, yeah, but my mortgage goes up $200. I'm like, yeah, but your overall payment goes down 300. So, anytime there's a conflict of interest, I'll say, okay, let me just give it to you in layman's terms. If I knock on your door once a month and give you a check for $300 a month, you're going to tell me no? And they say, oh no, of course not. I'm like, okay, so that's how you want to approach it, and then also you want to tie it into other things like, okay, I grew up in a single parent household. My mom and my father got divorced when I was 7 years old. My mom was spending money, on the mortgage, car note, food, things like that. And things were tight. I remember, taking sponge baths in the kitchen because the water got shut off. My mom had to go to the gas station and get bottles of water, and we had to bathe in the kitchen because the water got shut off. But, if the water bill was $150 and you had an extra $300, we'd be taking a bath right now instead of, doing a bird bath, if you will. So the money can go a long way. Anything that you save, you can allocate towards something else: food, gas, utilities, any subscriptions that you want to get back, things like that. So we try to look at the overall big picture of the person's finances and not just the little aspects that the people don't really know much about. So,
And that's the part that we often forget. We have to take the global perspective of our situation. And if you're looking at that global perspective of their situation, then they can see that in the long run, when I get to this time period, because and I had to do it, how much time do I want to be in this moment? Because my grandmother would often say, it'll be your dime or your time. So
mm-hmm.
because I did not have the dime, I had to spend my time preparing my foods. So cooking every meal, going back to the basics of preparing all of the meals at home, preparing a lunch, because it was a whole lot cheaper to buy the groceries for a week and then have that spurts out for the lunch for the boys and I over the next 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing a quick stop by like I once was able to.
Yeah,
Quickly stop by, let's say McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or something. Each one of those stops is about $20 to $35. If you do that every day at the end of the
it
week,
adds
you have
up.
spent over $100.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take that same $100 and you spend it on groceries, that gives you about 2 weeks, maybe three, depending on what you're doing. And
Yeah,
if
depending on
you
what
were
you get.
taught,
Yeah,
like my grandmother taught me,
we're gonna make that dollar stretch.
you can stretch a meal.
We're gonna make miracles every Thanksgiving.
We gonna make it. You ain't gotta wait for Thanksgiving because some of those miracles are needed today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been plenty of times where money was tight, and my wife, she made meals stretch. It's a lot you can do with a few cans of green beans and some rice and sausage and gravy. Make a little geechee meal or something like that for the week.
Geechee meal. See, I ain't heard that in so long.
My wife's from the country, so yeah. There's a lot of country sayings that you might hear from me.
That's all right. My husband picks with me because he says I'm a city-fied country girl.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother, she is from Macon County, Georgia. So coming
Okay.
up here as a native of Washington, D.C., she brought all of that with her. And people forget that Washington, D.C. is still South, so I'm still Southern.
It's yep. Despite what the gentrification and they're doing in DC, it's chocolate city.
Listen to that part. So let me ask you this, as we're going through getting a little more insight about what to do with preparing a home. You shared that when you're walking with individuals to help them reset, getting them to the surplus, now that they have the surplus because they've done all the various things that you just shared, what would be the next things that they would have to do to start getting their new home or maybe transitioning to move? Because some people just need to relocate in order to reset themselves in the
Yeah.
aftermath of their divorce.
The first thing is, like, if you're looking to get a new home, the first thing you want to do is get pre-approved. You can speak with a bank or a credit union. That's going to be pertinent because if you don't get pre-approved, you won't know how much home you can afford. So that's going to be the first step, is get pre-approved. From there, you kind of want to start building a savings account that's separate, just tailor-made for the expenses that you're going to accrue and run into with an initial purchase. You're going to need earnest money. That's at least $1,000 or $2,000 down. Depending on the loan program, if you do FHA, you may need 3% of the loan amount down. If it's conventional, you'll need 20% of the loan down. If you're a veteran, you need no money down. So it depends on that. Then based on the area, you may need a termite inspection. You may need a well water inspection if you're on well water. If you're buying an older home that's predated of 1975, you might need a lead paint inspection or even a foundation inspection if it's like an all brick home. There's a lot of nuances and things that come with the actual home purchase itself. So, and it's going to cost. So I would say on average, you're going to need about 7 to 10 grand just to cover closing costs as well and things like that. Because if you're not planning for the unexpected, you're going to get hit with, or blindsided with something, and you may not have the money. And next thing you know, the deal falls out and you've already wasted money. So very important that you get pre-approved and have about 7 or 10 grand in savings for any upcoming expenses.
And that is great information to share. And thank you for that, because often we don't pay enough attention to what we think. And if you have come on the heels of a situation like a divorce or your financial position has changed, you're thrown off with what can I really do? So for some, that pre-approval gives you a real realistic call, because when I went back and recognized when I finally had to do what I needed to do to move out of that apartment, my pre-approval loan did not give me any of the options that I really wanted. So I had to stay a little bit longer. I had to be a little more creative, had to find some new flexibilities. Let me ask you this. As the founder and lead consultant of Lone Ranger Consulting, tell individuals a little bit more about the strategies that you provide that they can use so that they know that you are their best selection, because you're just giving tidbits here, but there's so much more.
It starts with the analytical and cerebral assessment, just getting an idea of their spending habits, what triggers their spending habits, because, we all have emotional spending. How many times have you gotten mad at your spouse or just mad at something, and then you say, you know what, I'm going to go get something to eat, or I'm at the mall right now. I'm not having the best week right now. Let me go buy some new shoes, things like that. So we kind of try to assess where your emotional spending is, and then from there we kind of give you some guidance on just how to manage your emotions when it comes with dealing with the money. Because if you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage your money. So if you're angry, you're going to be tempted to spend. If you've never seen a certain amount of money in your bank account at one time, you're going to be tempted to spend it. So we kind of give you those emotional trigger alerts to let you know, like, oh, okay, let me put my debit card down. That's why earlier when I was mentioning you want to kind of use like a cash system, because if you go to the grocery store hungry, number one, don't ever go to the grocery store hungry. But if you go to the grocery store and you don't have a list, you're going to end up overspending. One of the ways to kind of help combat that is, okay, you bring $100 in cash. So that way you are paying attention to what you're spending. And then that way you don't have to worry about, is this account going to overdraft because the purchase hasn't, posted in your account yet, and things like that. But, once we kind of dive into the emotional aspect, then we set up the actual program for you to follow. We give you a beginner, intermediate, and advanced savings plan, where you start off with something small. You get in the habit of just putting something away, even if it's $10. And then once you get used to being responsible over little, the Lord gives you responsibility over a lot. And the next thing you know, that $10 savings turns into $20, $30. And next thing you know, you're putting $100 a week away. Then next thing you know, you got $10,000 in your account, and you have no urgency to just spend it. You just know what it's there, because you know what it's there for. It's like, oh, this 10,000, this is for my nest egg, and I'm not touching it unless there's an emergency. Or you got $2,000 set aside for your vacation, and it's like, well, hey, look, I can't go on this or this other trip right now because I'm saving for this trip. So it kind of gives you an idea of where you can spend, where you can save, and just an opportunity for you to just kind of get in tune with your emotions so you can know how to manage your money.
That's good to know, because there are lots of times we forget money is emotional. And if you make the decision to deal with how you're dealing with your emotions, because the chaos that you're walking through, whatever that life experience is, if you don't handle that well, it tumbles into so many other things. I appreciate you, L.R. Giving us information, and you have a special gift that you want to share with my audience today. And y'all will hear about that right after a word from our sponsors. He looked at me like I was crazy, but I knew what I had to do. It was time for him to go. So I packed up his things. Red alert. Is he the one? The pocket guide, the fine and lovely real life, tells my story. The free chapter is available for you in the link below. Tell us a little more about the free gift that you have for our audience today.
Yeah, so for anyone that is just looking for guidance on their finances, whether it be debt management, financial management, budgeting, investing, retirement planning, or if you need help with just understanding the documentation you may need for purchase or refi if you're in the middle of a divorce, I'm offering free consultations, and basically we'll just sit down. It's confidential. We'll talk about all of your goals, and we'll map out a plan here for you. And with that free consultation comes a year, basically a year subscription to the Lone Ranger program, where basically we'll reach out to you every month just to see how things are going with the plan that we created for you. If there's any tweaks or adjustments that we need to make, or if there's any additional questions and things like that. So we just want to be here for the public.
So Jay, is there any other information after all the stuff that you shared that people can have available to get them to the place where they can start getting pre-qualified for their loan? Is there any more that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, once you get pre-qualified from an income document standpoint, you're going to need a few things. If you're refinancing the home and you're getting your spouse off of title or off of the mortgage, you're going to need the final divorce decree to determine ownership interest. From an income document standpoint, if you're receiving child support, separate maintenance, or alimony, you can use that as qualifying income. In most cases, you need a copy of the final divorce decree or 2 months bank statement showing the deposits, and you can use that as income. And then lastly, if you're receiving any Social Security income from your children or anything like that, as long as they're under 19 years old and still in school, you can use that income as qualifying income. But if they're over 18 or 19 years old, you'll still receive it, but you can't use it as qualifying income because of continuance. But the most important thing is for anyone that is, just considering refining or purchasing, if you're looking to use child support or alimony, you just need either the final divorce decree or 2 months bank statement showing the deposits.
Thank you so much for that, Jay. And so for those of you, you see where you can reach him today at loanrangerconsulting@yahoo.com so that you can get your free gift today. Jay, thank you so much for this. I appreciate all that you've poured into our audience today. Is there one last thing you would like to share with them before we go?
When it comes to just your financial goals, trust the process, and there's going to be trade-offs for everything. And just give it time, and eventually you'll reap a harvest if you faint not.
That's the part that we often forget. We have to press through the process. So I appreciate all that you shared.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate you having me.
And so the people know, where can they find you if they want to go through and get a little more insight?
So you can follow me at the Lone Ranger 08 on TikTok and Instagram, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Lone Ranger Podcast. Just type in The Lone Ranger Podcast in the search engine and look for our symbol.
So you see the information down below. And for those of you that did not recall the symbol, well, let's put that up here one more time so that they can get the chance to see it at a glimpse. So I appreciate you, Jay, and sharing all that you shared with us.
Yeah, God bless. I definitely appreciate this. Look forward to doing this again.
Thank you. And so for today, if you don't remember anything else we've shared, here's the one thing we want you to know. You don't have to do this alone. There are resources and insight, and Jay has shared with you so much information that can help you get the global perspective that you need to move forward. And if you're looking for someone else to join you on the journey, feel free to go to my website, TanyaEhood.com. There you can click under the Work With Me tab and see the various ways that we can work with one another. And if you are on YouTube, you can join us live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we can continue the conversation or we can start a new one. In the meantime, this is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.